At midnight Friday into Saturday morning, a large B-2 strike package comprised of bombers launched from the continental United States. As part of a plan to maintain tactical surprise, part of the package proceeded to the west and into the Pacific as a decoy, a deception effort known only to an extremely small number of planners and key leaders here in Washington and in Tampa. The main strike package, comprised of 7 B-2 Spirit bombers, each with 2 crew members, proceeded quietly to the east with minimal communications. Throughout the 18-hour flight into the target area, the aircraft completed multiple in-flight refuelings. Once over land, the B-2s linked up with escort and support aircraft in a complex, tightly timed maneuver requiring exact synchronization across multiple platforms in a narrow piece of airspace, all done with minimal communications. This type of integration is exactly what our joint force does better than anyone else in the world. At approximately 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time last night, and just prior to the strike package entering Iran, a U.S. submarine in the Central Command Area of Responsibility launched more than 24 Tomahawk land attack cruise missiles against key surface infrastructure targets at Esfahan. As the Operation Midnight Hammer strike package entered Iranian airspace, the U.S. employed several deception tactics, including decoys, as the 4th and 5th generation aircraft pushed out in front of the strike package at high altitude and high speed, sweeping in front of the package for enemy fighters and surface-to-air missile threats. The strike package was supported by U.S. Strategic Command, U.S. Transportation Command, U.S. Cyber Command, U.S. Space Command, U.S. Space Force, and U.S. European Command. As the strike package approached Fordo and Natanz, the U.S. protection package employed high-speed suppression weapons to ensure safe passage of the strike package, with fighter assets employing preemptive suppressing fires against any potential Iranian surface-to-air threats. We are currently unaware of any shots fired at the U.S. strike package on the way in. At approximately 6:40 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 2:10 a.m. Iran time, the lead B-2 dropped 2 GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator weapons on the first of several aim points at Fordo. As the president stated last night, the remaining bombers then hit their targets as well, with a total of 14 MOPs dropped against 2 nuclear target areas. All 3 Iranian nuclear infrastructure targets were struck between 6:40 p.m. and 7:05 p.m. Eastern Time. Again, that's about 2:10 in the morning local time in Iran, with the Tomahawk missiles being the last to strike at Esfahan to ensure we retain the element of surprise throughout the operation. Following weapons release, the Midnight Hammer strike package exited Iranian airspace and the package began its return home. We are unaware of any shots fired at the package on the way out. Iran's fighters did not fly, and it appears that Iran's surface-to-air missile systems did not see us. Throughout the mission, we retained the element of surprise. In total, U.S. forces employed approximately 75 precision-guided weapons during this operation. This included, as the president stated last night, 14 30,000-pound GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrators, marking the first ever operational use of this weapon. I know that battle damage is of great interest. Final battle damage will take some time, but initial battle damage assessments indicate that all 3 sites sustained extremely severe damage and destruction. More than 125 U.S. aircraft participated in this mission, including B-2 stealth bombers, multiple flights of 4th and 5th generation fighters, dozens and dozens of air refueling tankers, a guided missile submarine, and a full array of intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance aircraft, as well as hundreds of maintenance and operational professionals. As the Secretary said, this was the largest B-2 operational strike in U.S. history and the second longest B-2 mission ever flown, exceeded only by those in the days following 9/11.
Hates me, and welcome to Trump Mafia. The mother of all battles has begun.
Shadowy flight into the dangerous world of a man who does not exist. A young loner on a crusade to champion the cause of the innocent, the helpless, the powerless, in a world of criminals who operate above the law.
The mother of all battles has begun. No, I'm just kidding, but I do want to talk about the strike on Iran, on the nuke facilities that they had. Yeah, they had, because they're obliterated. And it's kind of funny to see people talking about satellite pictures not showing the damage. Well, these were facilities 300 feet underground, right? So we're not talking about a surface building that was destroyed that you could see on a satellite, but you have two entry holes. So what happened is around 7 B-2 bombers flew all the way, like a 10-hour mission, right, to Iran and dropped a whole bunch of bunker busters right into those entry holes. And the GPS is pretty accurate. So the first couple of bombs will create a tunnel 200 feet and even more. And then all the rest of the bombs are just to cause a damage, right, to destroy anything that is 300 feet under. So it was extremely successful. It reminded me of Top Gun Maverick, the movie, and Star Wars, the first one, right, where they have to launch that, I don't want to mix up Star Trek and Star Wars, the photon torpedo, am I right, or what? Anyway, into the little hole, and even the computer system couldn't really handle it, so Luke had to use the Force. But we have amazing pilots. The GPS system they have is incredible, right? So it's accurate within a meter, so the entry holes are like a couple of meters, no problem, right? So that technique is actually called drilling. A couple of bunker busters and then a couple more, and the last ones are the ones that really destroy everything underground. And you have to do it because the reach is normally 200 feet, but this facility was built 300 feet underground, and they did it thinking, oh, even U.S. bunker busters cannot destroy it, but they thought wrong, as they usually do over there in Iran. They really underestimated President Trump and our Air Force, and it's also the misdirection that was incredible. You know, they had flights of B-2 bombers going to Guam, and everybody knew about it, so it would mean that a strike could happen maybe a few days later. But at that time, from the other direction, you already had the 7 B-2 bombers flying to Iran. And it was an incredible mission. And I have to tell you that, yeah, what Israel did also helped, but B-2 flies so high that even without what the Israelis did, we still could have done that. And what we did is something that Israel cannot do. I think we're probably the only country that can really do this kind of a thing, because we have the Mavericks, we have the B-2s, and we have the experience also. So it's been a great way to kind of reset everything, that people know that the USA is back, the military is back, after the disgrace of the Biden regime and pulling out of Afghanistan in that way. And also how Democrats like Obama, Biden, they always look away when Iran does something. Do you remember when they were torturing the Navy personnel that they captured, and they made videos of it? They were laughing at us. They were laughing. And John Kerry did nothing. Barack Obama did nothing. In fact, Barack Obama sent them billions and billions in cash. I mean, we're talking about a gangster move here. It's like Barack Obama and the Iranians colluded, and Barack Obama should be in jail, even just for that. But okay, this is the money that they were using to build these very facilities that are now gone, thanks to President Trump and his resolve. And he did give Iran 60 days, right? And Iran is used to talking to U.S. politicians and presidents that they talk a lot and they draw red lines, but then nothing happens. So they thought it was more of that. Again, they broke the Trump rule: never underestimate Donald Trump. And it's the first rule, the only rule, as I always say, since 2015. Now it turns out Laura Loomer, yeah, that monster, she plagiarized the Trump rule. She couldn't even give me credit. She goes, rule number 1, never bet against Donald Trump. Okay, great. It's not the same, I know, but yeah, she does watch what I say, and she has been watching what I say, because she's a notorious thief of ideas. And a lot of people online are just not creative, but they have the way to get followers or whatnot. And that brings me to all these panicans, fake MAGA, Steve Bourbon Bannon, Sloppy Steve, Jack Polenbich, or whatever his damn name is, General Failed Flynn, the so-called general. Now he's just an old man. Nobody cares about what he says except a couple of people online, and you can really tell it's all about just traffic, right? People wanting traffic. So even these numbskulls get traffic. But these people have been exposing themselves. Matt Gaetz also. He was all like, Israel sucks and I don't like this. A real panicking. Then now, after the strike, he's like, yeah, this is what I wanted the whole time. Yeah, sure. He flip-flops more than John Kerry. John Kerry was watching Matt Gaetz flip-flop, and he was like, whoa, mad respect, bro. You really know how to flip-flop. It's like, yeah, 10-10-10, right? The judge score on the flip-flopping. Matt Gaetz, well, what a rat. But anyway, it's not only these people that I mentioned. Had a whole bunch of libertarians and the usual suspects, all like, we don't want war, we don't want regime change. But this was a MAGA strike on Iran, not a neocon strike. That's the difference. And people often ask me, they say, what is a neocon? And I'm going to give you an unusual answer. The answer is, it's the George Soros doctrine, which means to attack countries, change their regime, or you do it through internal revolutions. And you've seen that, the color revolutions, but also lawfare. But then you also have how to sanction countries, attack countries, and you had the coup in Ukraine 2014, and many others, right? It's Soros since the 90s. So that is the reason why he's never investigated or arrested, because the Pentagon, the CIA, our whole system has been doing what this guy wanted. The George Soros doctrine. But in comes President Trump. He's there with a MAGA doctrine, and it's very different. It's not about regime change. It's about putting America first. And a lot of peeps out there are saying, well, we're fighting a war for Israel. And I'm growing very tired of these people obsessing about Israel. It's 2025. The state was created in 1948. The time for wars and boycotts and smearing a country because you don't like them. It's over. When we created the USA, the Brits came back and fought a war to get us, right? And the Spanish, Mexicans, and the Indians too. But it didn't work, and we still exist. Well, in the same way, Israel still exists, so deal with it. And Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, Qatar, Egypt, they're all getting along with Israel. But, online people are very obsessed about Israel. But taking out the nuke facilities helps Russia. They're happy about it. Saudi Arabia, they're happy. Jordan, Iraq, of course, Israel. But this was a America First thing. Because these people that always chant death to America, and they killed many of our soldiers and even tortured them. Remember that? When John Kerry and Barack Obama did nothing and they were torturing people on cam, humiliating our Navy personnel. Well, now they found out because we look out for America. And so we don't want Iran to have nukes because they could threaten us. But Russia also doesn't want Iran to have nukes because it's a border state. So if they have nukes, it's great when they're allies, but then what if they suddenly join NATO or get some hardcore regime that hates Russia? Then Russia has a neighbor that is a nuclear state. It's very dangerous, but they cannot blast Iran. They cannot bomb Iran. They're allies. So we did the dirty work for them. So Russia, and especially President Putin, should be very happy and grateful that we removed the headache for Russia. And of course, Israel should be very grateful to us. But we did it for us. We did it for America first. It was a MAGA strike, not designed to change the regime, but we determined an objective, that is, Iran should not have nukes. Then you do what you have to do. And in passing, you restore the credibility of our military. Yeah, I know our ground troops still need a lot of work, especially in drilling as well. But it's beginning, right? We have to create a ground force that is very lethal, because now even Ukrainians are getting combat experience, the Russians, and our troops are used to doing something like in Afghanistan, but that is not the same as doing a conventional war out in Europe. So I think we should get out of NATO. That's my opinion, because Russia is not our enemy. It was never our enemy. Russia was an ally in World War II. Communism was the enemy. And so when the Soviet Union was expanding after World War II, that's an enemy. So if communism failed, Soviet Union failed, then you just have Russia left. That's not our enemy. It's a Christian nation on top of that. And we're going to be allied with Al-Qaeda and ISIS and Hezbollah, and then see Russia as an enemy. What? Because they're a Christian? I mean, that doesn't make any sense, right? And also the whole Ukraine-Russia thing. It's a disaster. Ukraine was fine before the coup, right? The 2014 coup. So again, it's the Choco regime and all the nefarious people that, just like with Biden, could do what they wanted. Barack Obama was also a puppet. People always believe like he was doing this or that. But again, it was Soros, it was the deep state people doing whatever they wanted, just like during the Biden regime years. But with Trump, they can't control him. But they always knew that President Trump was very pro-Israel, and he also always said he didn't want Iran to have nukes. Makes perfect sense. And so I always support that. So online you have a lot of people that go against President Trump, and I voted for Trump, but I didn't vote for this, and I don't want wars and neocons in Israel, and they don't like the Jews. Okay, I get it. But again, it's so primitive. These people are so primitive, obsessing about some country. Why can't they obsess about the USA and making America great again? Because they're not real MAGA. There's a difference between us, people on my Patreon or people listening to me right now. We're the real McCoy, the real MAGA, which is we've been with President Trump since 2015, and we've seen people get on and off the Trump train, but we're welded on. Even if we're going off a cliff, we're welded onto the Trump train, and that's the way it is, right? But it's been an amazing ride. 10 years, right? 10 years of goodness, because even the bad times where President Trump is under fire, even almost killed twice, it also exposes a lot. And a lot of people have been exposed and disposed of. The Bush clan, the McCain clan, the Cheney clan. I mean, these people are all gone. Mitt Romney's gone. as good as Paul Ryan's gone, Jeff Flake, remember all these people, they're gone. Even in the media, we've seen a lot of idiots come and go. And now we have more idiots, right? The panicans, the fake MAGA libertarians, and the Xers that just want traffic. The ones that are always claiming they're the shot callers for MAGA, Charlie Kirk, Steve Bourbon Bannon. When you listen to these people, they really feel like they are MAGA. But they really conflate that, online social media or even X is not the same as the real world. And even online, during the campaign last year, they should have realized, or maybe they still didn't get it, that some of these podcasters like Theo Vaughn or the others, they get millions and millions of people, right? Or TikTok. But these Xers are kind of, living in their own little world. And so they create their own reality. And it's kind of sad because I'm there and, I don't really care about growing, or it's not my job, right? So I have that ability just to see what's going on. That's what I'm interested also, just to see what the Trump movement is doing, what the real MAGA is, and how we are making America great again. And also to see all the obstacles that are in our path, right? It's really a big lift, and our country is still in a lot of trouble financially. And, just think about what would happen when President Trump suddenly is gone, or after 2028, what's going to happen? Maybe everything will fall back to how it was, and we'll go off the deep end. But I don't want to be a doomer. I have been a doomer because I really did think Democrats would be able to cheat again in 2024. But I feel very happy that now we have so much that is working out. The deporting of illegals, it's made very difficult. You can tell Democrats are completely relying on getting illegals to vote for them. That's why they're fighting for even criminals, right? Because without it, they have nothing. And that's also why they fight against the cuts, the Doge cuts or something else, because that's how they finance a Democrat Party. This is a Democrat Party that is so out of touch with the American people. They have to cheat. They have to rig everything. And you've seen that. Even online, they go to YouTube, they go to Google, they ask for censorship, but also the lawfare you saw. So now they're in disarray because they did not expect President Trump to win and to be so dynamic and so full of energy. Again, they always underestimate Donald Trump breaking the Trump rule. Even after 10 years, they still don't get it. And that goes especially for people in the media. But what I noticed is that even some of these fair weather Trump supporters that claim to be all MAGA-like and, I love Trump and stuff like that, they still don't understand President Trump. I mentioned Laura Loomer, but after 10 years, she still acts like President Trump has some handlers that are whispering in his ear and making him choose the wrong people somehow. I mean, she's a complete idiot. And it goes for not only her, but a lot of people online, right? These are misfits and riffraff, in my opinion. But that's the way it is, right? So President Trump sometimes has to herd them or convince them or give them a cookie and so they can be good for another couple of weeks. Or, he sends these letters like an article clipping or something, and then he signs it, and then they feel so happy. Then they're good to go for another month or whatnot. So you're talking about media people. These social media people are all media people. So they can also be fake news, and they're also easily bought and sold. You can see that. It's kind of amusing to go on X or elsewhere and then to guess whether somebody's being paid by Qatar or by Israel or related entities, because it's pretty often that you see they're shilling for a team that they say the most obnoxious stuff. And what you then notice is that they're not afraid to throw President Trump under the bus. because you blame Mother Tucker Carlson or some of these other people for kind of harassing President Trump or criticizing President Trump. But the so-called neocons, Mark Levin, Ben Shapiro, when it seemed that President Trump was going to give Iran a peace deal, they were slamming our defense secretary and President Trump and appeasement and what's this, and slamming the administration. But then when it seems like President Trump was more leaning towards strikes on Iran, suddenly they're praising him to the hilt. Ooh, 5D chess, MAGA foreign policy, ooh. You know, they're just the same as those people that are fake MAGA, that they love Trump, but then when he does something that, you know, helps Israel as well as other countries, but is for us, they're like, it's all for Israel, and President Trump is a puppet, and I don't want any foreign wars, and it's unconstitutional, and whining like little babies. So they're all praising Trump and showing how much they appreciate President Trump. He took a bullet for us, but as soon as he does anything that could be perceived as helping Israel, then they're like, I didn't vote for this. What is Trump doing? Trump has failed. And you gotta laugh, right? And again, it's online, because out there in the real world, people that voted for Trump, they're very happy with everything he's doing, right? So people out there know that he's always going to be obstructed by deep state people and fair weather supporters or foreign countries, organizations, the UN, you name it. They know that. But that's also why they voted for President Trump, because they trust in him to make decisions and to play 5D chess and to do what's right and to get as much done as possible to make America great again and to put American people first, to put America first. And he's doing exactly that.